Alright, so welcome back to Everdell Spirecrest. So for this video, we're going to go over the weather cards. So let's get started. So first we're going to go over the winter weather cards, and obviously only one of these during the winter season will affect you. You won't get hit by all three. You're only going to get hit by one of them, but they're all pretty bad. So first we have the Blizzard, and this one has been chosen for many games when we've played Spirecrest. Whenever you gain resources, so whatever resource it may be, whenever you gain resources from a forest location, you will gain one less. So the forest locations are these spots here. So these usually have ways of giving you tons of extra resources or tons of extra cards, for instance. And so if you were to gain a resource from a forest location during a blizzard, you're going to get one less resource. So careful, because some of those forest locations may only give you one resource anyways, and then you get no resources if that was the case. Some of them will sometimes give you like 3 cards and then a pebble or something like that, right? Well, then you wouldn't get the pebble, obviously. You'd get the 3 cards, so that's something to note. But if you were doing it for the pebble, then your best interest would be to get the pebble from a basic location like that one right there. So it doesn't affect those. This only affects the forest locations. It doesn't affect the basic locations. Then we have the Deep Freeze, and I have not gotten to play with this one yet. It's the only one that has not been chosen. This one's been chosen like 2 or 3 times. This one's been chosen a couple of times as well, but this one has never gotten randomly chosen as of yet. So the Deep Freeze will make it so forest locations may not be visited. So during winter, you won't be able to even go to these forest locations anyways. So that's something to note. So the Blizzard makes it so you don't want to because it makes one less resource for you. This one makes it so you can't even do it. So if you ask me, I think this one is better than this one, because then you're not tempted to obviously go to those forest locations anyways, because you can't because of the Deep Freeze. And then the last one here is Dense Fog. Every card in your hand costs 1 additional resource to play. So this one makes it much harder because now you have this whole problem of you want to play a card, but now you have to get an extra resource, which most likely won't work too well because you weren't able to, because you were barely able to get the resources to play a certain card. Now there is a way around this. So most players, they want to only play cards in their hands and hardly ever play cards from the meadow. This only affects cards in your hand. So if you play a card from the meadow, for instance, and there's always 8 in the meadow, you play one of those, you will not have to pay an additional resource to play it as long as you're playing the card from the meadow. So that is a workaround for Dense Fog, and so as long as you're very good at playing with cards from the meadow, the Dense Fog won't hurt you too hard in comparison to the other two. But this one is still pretty bad, and this one is almost as bad. So either way you look at it, it can be, they each have ways, workarounds, but they each do something different and they hurt you pretty badly, obviously. Especially the Blizzard. Alright, so let's move on to the spring season and the possibilities that you'll happen to have during spring. This first one is heavy rain, and then we have lightning storms, and then we have a tornado. So I have played with heavy rain, and I have played with lightning storms, but I have not played with the tornado as of yet. So heavy rain. Whenever you visit a basic location, gain 1 less resource or 1 less card. So if you visit a basic location, so it's these locations here, you're either going to get 1 less resource. So if you go here, you get nothing at all because it's only going to give you a pebble. If you go here, you're going to get nothing at all because it's only going to give you a berry. So if you go here, you're either going to get the berry or you're going to get the card. If you go here, you will get the point for sure, but you're only going to get 1 card. If you go here, you're either going to get the resin or the card. If you go here, you're just going to get a resin. If you go here, you're either going to get a twig or a card. Or, yeah, so you're either going to get a twig or you're going to get 2 twigs. If you go here, you're just going to get 2 twigs. So obviously, going to a basic location during heavy rain will make it so you'll want to go to the forest locations most likely. So that's something to note, and obviously, thank goodness for forest locations. And then obviously during that blizzard, thank goodness for, you know, basic locations. So this is like the other opposite of that one, the blizzard, in a way. Then we have lightning storms. Every construction costs one additional resource to play. So this makes it obviously harder to play construction cards. It doesn't affect critter cards, which is why I try to play, if lightning storm is going to get chosen, which you won't know for sure, of course, but I always try to get at least 1 or 2 buildings if I possibly can during the spring season, during the winter season anyways, because if this happens during spring, this is horrible for me, because I try to play my buildings before I play the critters, so that way I can play all my critters for free. And so obviously this one is horrible for me. This is probably my most hated one of the 3, because now I'm forced to just play critters for the spring season, which is sort of a drag. Other than either that, or I pay an additional resource to play it, which is also not really what I want to do, obviously. And then we have Tornado. You may not play any card from the meadow. Now, I haven't got to play with this one yet, but if you ask me, that doesn't really bother me. Oh well. Sure, I sometimes play cards from the meadow, but it's not a huge problem if I can't play a card from a meadow. It's not a huge deal, especially since this is spring. If there was a card I wanted to play from the meadow, but couldn't because of the whole tornado thing, I would just wait until I prepare for the next season, which would be summer, and during the season of summer, you actually get to take 2 cards from the meadow. So then I'd just be like, oh, I'll take the 2 cards from the meadow that I wanted to play during spring anyway. So it's not a huge deal if there's a tornado out. So if you ask me, the tornado is the easiest one to play with out of all 3 of these, for sure. So that's it for spring. Let's move on to summer next and see what we got for that. Alright, so we have the drought, we have the heat wave, and we have severe wind. Well, the drought is you do not activate green production cards. So if this is summer, you do not get to activate any of your green production cards if you have an ability that lets you do it, or if you play a green production card during summer and there's a drought, you won't be able to play your green production cards. So that's horrible. That is horrible. Unless, of course, you were smart and you played all your green production cards in winter and spring, then it's not a huge deal because they won't activate normally during summer anyways. So obviously, if this was going on, your best interest during summer is to play cards like red destination cards, tan traveler cards, blue governance cards, purple prosperity cards. Those are the cards you'll want to play with during the summer season. Although, if you weren't able to play that many green production cards during spring and during winter, and now you finally can play green production cards, and it's summertime, and this is a drought, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard because then you won't get the green production until autumn, obviously. So then it will sort of like makes you think, do I really want to play a green production card that is only going to get activated one time during autumn, preparing for autumn? Do I really want to do that? Probably not. You'll probably want to play one of the other cards instead. Then we have the heat wave. Every critter costs 1 additional resource to play. So the heat wave doesn't horribly hurt me that much, because like I said, I play construction cards first usually, and then I play critters with the corresponding construction usually. So if there is a heat wave, I only have to pay 1 berry to play a critter if I have the corresponding building. So that is something to note, but it's better than, obviously paying a whole bunch of extra berries for sure. So the heat wave is probably the easiest one to work with, at least for me. Then there's the severe wind. You must discard 1 card after you play a card, if able to do so. So this obviously is something you'll have to plan ahead for. Do you have cards in your hand you're not going to play with? Because if that's the case, the severe wind won't be too hard on you. As long as you have a few cards that you're not worried about losing. Because you're going to have to discard a card every time you play a card during that season of summer. So that is a problem if you don't have very many cards to begin with. You're going to start losing cards that you did want to play because of the severe wind. So that is something to note. You might even hold back playing them during summer just to avoid that problem. But in the end, it's also detrimental if you decide to wait till the next season. So this is a horrible one for sure if that's the case. But like I said, there's a workaround. Just have a ton of cards you're not going to play with, and it won't be a problem. It won't be an issue for you. The only one I haven't got to play with is the heat wave. The drought has hit me once, and the severe wind has been definitely something that happens a lot. But like I said, only about 50% of the games I've played was where the severe wind was horrible for me. Only half. The other half of the time, I had tons of cards that I didn't want to play anyways, and so I can't say it was a huge problem to have to discard one here and there. But that's it for the summer season. And so now we just have the autumn cards left for weather. So first we have Wildfire. Thankfully, this has not hit me yet. We have not played with this one. Then there's Flooding, and it's the worst one there is. And then there's Hail. So let's go over why Wildfire is the worst one you could possibly get. Immediately place one of your workers here permanently. So you get your final 2 workers in autumn, and you'll finally have 6 workers to work with. But as soon as autumn hits, you're going to have to put a critter here to basically put the fire out for the rest of the season, and so you've lost this worker permanently, and you won't get him back for the rest of the game. So that is horrible. This is the worst one there is. Horrible. And it affects every player once they make it to autumn. So everyone is going to be having work critters here putting out the fire. So that's what we hate about wildfires. Obviously, the worst one. But let's go over the next 2 and show you why these 2 aren't nearly as bad. Next, we have Flooding. Every card in the meadow costs 1 additional resource to play. I can't say that bothers me that much. Towards the end of the game, I hardly ever play cards from the meadow anyways. So this one is a nice one to work with. Flooding doesn't bother me that much. Then we've got, and I've actually played with that one, and same thing with Hail. With this one, though, you must discard 1 card after you visit a basic or forest location if able. Once again, this one isn't that bad because I usually have a bunch of cards I'm not going to play with anyways during the last season, so I can't say that this is too horrible for me. Anyways, it's definitely nothing compared to the Wildfire. But this one is definitely probably the tamest of the 3. And so you see, unless you get the Wildfire, you can see that these 2 for the last season aren't that bad in comparison to all the other ones from the other seasons. Unless you get this one. You get this one. It's horrible. For sure. So that's it for the weather cards. Thank you guys for watching. That's it for the weather cards. And we'll start going over some of the Discover cards in the next video. See you guys then.